Hello, good evening and welcome to tonight's Off the Ball. It's Richie McCormack here with you for the next 3 hours. Manchester, so much to answer for. It's red versus blue, Mick Hucknall versus the Gallagher brothers, United versus City, a game that could go a long way to deciding the destination of this year's Premier League title. We'll be at Old Trafford shortly to look ahead to tonight's Manchester derby. On top of that, tonight, Wednesday Night Rugby, will begin our look ahead to the Champions Cup final with Keith Wood and Andy Dunn joining us tonight. Also, Colin O'Brien, the Republic of Ireland Under-17s manager, will speak to us just barely over a week out from the start of the Under-17 European Championships in Ireland's first game against Greece in Tala. On top of that, Rhys McClenaghan will begin his look ahead to Tokyo 2020 and his possible involvement. A very confident young gymnast joining us here in Studio 2. Plus, fresh off being named in the EFL and indeed the PFA Team of the Year for League One, we'll be joined by James Collins. But tonight's game in Manchester is the main focus of tonight's attention.
Walcott's in the box, he takes a shot, and it's there for Everton. Theo Walcott puts the ball past Sammy De Gea, and Everton are out the gate. They're home and hosed. Manchester United getting absolutely spanked here at Goodison Park.
Got weeds in the garden, you've got to get rid of them, but there's some Japanese knotweed at that football club, and it's attacking the foundations of the house that needs dealing with properly.
Whips it in, Bernardo Silva round the back, David Silva with an open goal.
They're all to blame for this. He's sat there, he tells them what to do, they go out and they all switch off. Them 2 goals they scored were all avoidable, all of them was.
Aguero gets it back from Mahrez, Aguero shot! Oh! Wonderful finish from Sergio Aguero! Rifle it into the roof of the net! And it is Manchester City 2, Manchester United 0, a nightmare start to the second half.
It's not scary to go there and play when before it was very more difficult.
Looking for Sané, the post finds Gundogan, and that is 3-1, and that is the game for Manchester City. Ilkay Gundogan took it down to the edge of the 6-yard box and stroked it past David De Gea. City 3, United 1.
I'm in charge, and I'm the one that give him the instructions on how we're going to play, and it's my duty to get them performing better than that. But I'm sure we'll get a response.
Response is what they need. The teams are in. William O'Callaghan joins us in the studio. Dan McDonnell's going to be here for the duration of the evening as well. Will, you've got the teams from Old Trafford tonight?
Yeah, team news just in the last few minutes. United making 5 changes from that game against Everton at the weekend. Matty O'Darmian comes in at right back. His first start since they lost to Liverpool in Jose Mourinho's last game in charge. Luke Shaw is playing at left back. Ashley Young, Ander Herrera and Jesse Lingard are also in. Perhaps the big news up front with Marcus Rashford picked as number 9. Romelu Lukaku is benched for the game. 3 changes for Man City. Vincent Kompany has come in, Fernandinho and David Silva. Kevin De Bruyne is out injured, not part of the squad at all tonight, as that means Bernardo Silva will be up front alongside Sterling and Sergio Aguero. So both teams ringing the changes there.
Dan, we're going to get into this in more detail with Miguel Delaney, who's over at Old Trafford tonight shortly, but your initial impressions from the team news there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone sort of saw that Manchester United side coming, so I mean, it's hard to sort of analyse that and figure out what the sort of thinking behind it might be. I mean, obviously we know De Bruyne is out, but you still look at the City side and the strength that's there, and they're willing to overcome it. And we'll see. You know, obviously Sterling's been pretty impressive of late, and whose territory he's going to be manning, you know, as such, or who's going to be given the job and trying to task him. So, look, I don't know. I mean, there's obviously a weird dynamic around this game, and I think I've heard it said, I think even Enda out there had said it earlier, that people are sort of assuming that that Manchester United have the option of turning up tonight and, you know, giving people what they want, you know, in the sense that they have the power to control the performance and take the title race whatever way they want to take it. I mean, I see it as straightforward to some degree, that really, on all evidence, that you should win the game, and on form they should win it. And yeah, there's the derby has this, you know, you're looking for this magic to occur, you know, for logic to go out the window in some shape or form. But as Will says, like, you know, someone like Darmian comes in who hasn't played in some time. They're fiddling around a bit with their options. They're playing a team that certainly, you know, it's not an 11 that Solskjaer has picked during his reign at any point, you know. So it's very hard to sort of drum up the enthusiasm, having watched the game on the weekend, to believe, other than you believe that there's some magic about the derby and something about the reaction and the atmosphere and the night itself that can lift the team to another level.
Dan. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is taking the United squad to visit the Cliff. So this is what's going to change everything over the course of the next 2 hours. Took them to their old training ground to go, this is where such and such happened. This is where, Norman Whiteside needed to sober up in a corner.
This is where Russell Beardsmore was put in the laundromat for a while and put on full spin.
This is where Lou McCarry did certain things to people's bags that daren't be mentioned at this hour of the evening on radio. This is the stuff that's going to change tonight's game.
Miguel Delaney wrote a really good piece about this the weekend. We're only going to be talking about him in a while anyway, but he basically said, look, one of the problems is United seem to be trapped in the past. The whole idea is that everything to try and go forward for United is to try and look back. And that's one of the things Solskjaer has been doing. Ahead of the game at the Nou Camp last week, everything was about trying to be inspired by the team of 99, going back to see the Cliff, getting Ferguson down to the training ground. Everything seems to be trying to bottle up what they've done successfully in the past. Even the idea of maybe Mike Phelan being their next technical director as well. Things have changed. There's no fear factor for City at all here. City used to have a terrible record at Old Trafford. They've now won in 5 of their last 7 trips there.
I suppose there's a danger is we're probably in the generation that can be a bit nostalgic about that Manchester United time. I'm
not.
Well, no, but you know what I mean. I'm not necessarily overcome by emotion thinking about.
I'd question the sanity of anybody who's not a Manchester United supporter who'd look back on that with rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah, but if you're 21, I guess what I'm saying, if you're a 21-year-old footballer now, then what does that do for you? What are your Manchester United memories now? Obviously there still has been some pretty good stuff in recent times. You'll remember Moscow and you'll remember the last days of Ferguson and so on. But there comes to what are you trying to inspire them by doing? It is something that's slipped into the past. And I always find the interesting dynamic about City and Manchester United now is that how many years passes before people growing up in a certain area they think of City, and I know that there's the amazing history of Manchester United you'll always live with, but I mean, isn't the story that quite a lot of the Manchester United legends, their kids are involved with the City youth set up, the City set up, the scouting set up, everything is far ahead. And actually, as you said, Miguel's piece, but it's touched on that Manchester United is in the past because it's a club that hasn't really adapted to the modern in some aspects of how they do their work. So in a decade's time, what are people talking about?
53106 is our text number tonight. You can get us on Off the Ball. And McDonnell Dan on Twitter if you want to direct them in his direction generally. I want to touch on this as well before we get into Will's Newsround. Last night as well, I know you were in Tala in a purely civilian capacity, looking on at last night's match. A proper derby.
They're all proper derbies.
Shamrock Rovers and Bows. Perhaps the game didn't necessarily get to be all that it perhaps might have been given the refereeing decisions in the first half, and we can get into the rights and wrongs of them a little bit later on. But in terms of the occasion, this is everything that somebody marketing the League of Ireland would have absolutely dreamt about last night, was that scenario, that crowd, and the fact that everything went so swimmingly well in terms of, I hate saying this in terms of football, but in terms of the product.
Yeah, I loved it. I really like going to games, and then sometimes you go to the press box and you're in that zone where you just go to the press box and chatting to people in the press box, whatever. But actually just getting out around the ground, and it was a really good occasion. And I know there was drama and there was incident and there was stuff that happened that maybe made the second half maybe a slight bit of an anticlimax to some degree.
It was cagey in the second half.
But strip all that away from it. For a Tuesday night in Dublin to have 6,500 people out in Tala watching a game, it would sort of encourage you without deluding people as well. There's obviously a lot to improve and there's a lot that's wrong in the league, but I'd be of the view that at least get your big occasions right and get your showpiece occasions right, and you can't just jump from 0 to 100 in terms of people having maybe a casual interest in the league to suddenly being fanatical, or having no interest to suddenly being casual. It takes steps, and if we can start off at least by the derby matches and certain events, getting people tuned into them in a casual, and hopefully then that has a knock-on effect over time. But even the derby in recent years, and you would know, some of the Rovers Bows derbies in recent times, and a lot of that is to do with the clubs maybe being at a low ebb as well, and maybe even particularly Bows until they've sort of got their act together in recent years, that maybe the events lost a bit of their sparkle too, but it's really made a revival in the last couple of years, that game. And the only slight frustration now is that the next one will be in Dalymount and there'll be loads of people turned away.
Yeah.
Because there actually isn't the demand, which is a great thing.
There is the demand, but there's no where to put them.
The facility is there. Whereas you look at last night, and if you, it just goes to show, like, if you put teams in a good stadium with a good backdrop, there was, I know Nathan was there with his kids, and people can, there's a family aspect, but also a great atmosphere aspect. It's a good night, and that's all you have to. That's what you have to aspire towards. And the places that don't have that facilities or don't have that match day experience or whatever it might be, they have to look to get up to that standard and to follow it. So
it shows the imperative to get the Dalymount project over the line.
100%.
To invest in St. Pat's. I know there's a couple of our own Stephen Doyle posted a tweet last night going, this is what's possible when the facilities are there, and there are others saying, listen, give the St. Michael's Estate area over to Pat's. That's perhaps getting ahead of ourselves. But there is a sense that if you do have, in the old Field of Dreams adage, if you build it, they will come. If you have the facilities and if you have the product in front of them, I was just saying this to Colin O'Brien off air earlier on, like the product in terms of football has possibly rarely been better, because you've got a lot of teams in that Premier Division who are actually trying to play football the right way. So your on-pitch stuff is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It's trying to get the ancillary stuff around that is probably a little bit more nebulous in trying to get people actually in the door and facilitate them properly.
Yeah, 100%. But the product is also affected by the facilities too. Like, sometimes there's good players playing on very bad pitches, and from week to week, which is a particular problem. At particular points of the season, depending on traffic on particular pitches, or UCD, they have rugby and there's other commitments, and that's fine. And there's always going to be imperfections that are going to impact on things. But you can have a debate about standards and where it is relative to recent times. And what's definitely true is there's more technical players in the league than I can recall in recent times, particular type of players. And you go and watch someone like Danny Mandrea play for Bows last night, Jack Burns on the pitch as well. Like, there's proper footballers, young Dublin lads who like to get the ball down and play. And when they have the surface and the stadium and the environment to do it, it's good. We're not, trying to proclaim it that it's something that it's not. No. We're just saying that I've always said this, like, you can't expect people to just suddenly just go and watch 30 games a season and become hardcore, but if people can get it into their mind that when they're picking their Friday night entertainment or their Monday or Tuesday night or whatever, that it's an option. And I think there's been a bit more of an open-minded attitude towards it in recent years, because clubs have been more progressive in their thinking, but they have to keep going. And without going into the bigger picture, like, there's obviously bigger things going on though in Irish football at the moment, and I think it has been recognised that the league probably has to be at the centre of whatever the future may be. And I think that just occasions like last night coming along as it did during the time that we've had, there was a positivity around it, because you're like, right, there are things that you can be cheerful about too, and you have to use the interest that was there last night as an excuse to drive for that kind of support, and as you say, maybe to drive some of those stadium projects and other things that actually are important and need to get going.
Yeah, fingers crossed the people who've seen last night and what is capable of coming into the league can take notice. We'll get more into that match a little bit later on. Keith Long, the Beans manager, is going to join us on the line. But we'll start the news round. I know we've looked at what's going on in Manchester tonight, but there is also a game in Molyneux to look ahead to as well this evening.
Yeah, pretty important game, given teams are stumbling their way into the top four at the end of this season. Arsenal can go back into the top four if they win at Wolves. Wolves, however, unbeaten in their last 9 home games in all competitions, while Arsenal have a horrible record against the top half teams this year away from home. They've won just 4 of 7 games against teams ranked in the top half. The team news in for that one as well. Wolves have made just 1 change from their draw against Brighton. It means that Leander Tendonker has come back into the team. Morgan Gibbs-White drops to the bench. Matt Doherty playing at right back for Wolves this evening. Arsenal have made 7 changes from the 11 that lost against Crystal Palace 3-2 at the weekend. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang not part of the squad. He's had a small operation on his nose today, so he's not part of the squad at all. Socrates, Nacho Monreal, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Granit Xhaka, Lucas Torreira, Henrik Mkhitaryan and Alex Iwobi come into the team there. So it's Lacazette who's going to be leading the line, Iwobi and Ozil behind him.
And there is news, it seems. We mentioned James Collins was named in the PFA Team of the Year for League One. We'll be speaking to him a little bit later on. We weren't expecting the Player of the Year to be revealed possibly until the weekend, but
Matt Lawton in the Daily Mail had different ideas today, it seems. Yeah, Virgil van Dijk apparently has won the PFA Premier League Player of the Year. It's going to be announced tomorrow. The Daily Mail report, written by Matt Lawton, says the Liverpool defender has edged out Man City's Raheem Sterling to the prize. The other players who have been shortlisted were Sergio Aguero, Sadio Mane, Bernardo Silva and Eden Hazard.
Very rare that a defender would get that award.
Yeah. I still think it's mad that it's named at this point of the season. I know why. There's obviously reasons for it, but I mean, it just ends badly if he has a costly slip at some point in the next couple of days. But I think it's probably a fair enough shout. I mean, I'd imagine some of the other attacking players on the list. I mean, all the other players on the list are attacking. They probably would have chopped into each other's vote to some degree. Whereas I think it's hard to argue. Would you have any complaints with that verdict? I mean, he has. I mean, the Sterling's been excellent. I don't think any of the other four. I think when you look back on this season, you will always remember. Even if Liverpool don't win the title, you will remember how important Van Dijk was to that title race. He's sort of wrapped in with that story.
He's got something that it sounds almost trite to say, but he's got a presence about him that a lot of big players have had down through the years that you don't necessarily see from a modern day centre half. Yeah, he has a certain poise about him. I think he's
a calming influence over Liverpool's defence as well. Like if you're making the argument here in terms of him winning it, you'd probably say he's had more of an impact on Liverpool's form than the forward players have had for Chelsea, City or for Liverpool. Last season Mo Salah won it, but that's because he shot the lights out in terms of his goal total. That's down a bit this year. And I think if Van Dijk was missing for Liverpool for long periods, Liverpool would not be in a title race.
Yeah, I agree. And it also there's a consistency. I wasn't sure about Salah last year because I sort of liked De Bruyne's chances. I thought maybe across the entire campaign he might have been a bit
40 odd goals weren't enough for you, Dan.
Oh, well, Salah was excellent, but like Liverpool had in the early part of the season they dropped points in quite a few games, and like Salah was amazing at the time. Like he was amazing at the time when the votes were almost cast. Whereas I think this one you can't really say that his timing has been a factor in any way. I think he's been there throughout the year doing it. So
yeah, City naysayers have already been in touch, Dan. Lads, City living in a Pep bubble, won't last forever, won't even last long, says one texter.
You wonder, yeah. Well, I don't know, but I'm not sure I'm sure about that. If what everyone says about the structure beneath the sort of the academy set up, I mean, they're pretty extensive scouting network, and by all accounts, they're doing some pretty good work. So I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Will Big Mick has been in town?
He has, and he's had a lot to say. He was having a go at the Ipswich fans earlier today as well, saying, I hope you enjoy the boring football when you're playing in League One.
He didn't.
He did.
Come on.
So he's had a few interesting things to say. He's also been talking about Vinnie Perth's claims that Patrick Hooban should be in the Ireland squad. He scored 81 goals in 130 games for Dundalk. But Mick McCarthy has insisted the recent controversies at the FAI won't have a negative effect on the team. And he's also been responding to Perth's comments when he spoke to our reporter, Stephen Doyle, earlier today.
Look, everybody's got an opinion on, and especially their own players, that they've done less and got in international squads. How does he know that? How do they know that? It's a great, isn't it? Let's have a dig at the national team manager because he's not looking at this player or that player and he should be in the squads. I'm not convinced by that. We try and get around and watch the games. Let them get in the squads. Let them keep playing well. Let them get in the squads. And do you know what? I'm gone out of here in 12 months' time. Anyway, I'll do the European Championships. Please God, we qualify. I'm gone. Stephen Kenny will know all those players and then he can pick all those. Won't that be great?
And Mick, the stuff that's been going on the last few weeks with the FAI and all the stuff that's been in the papers, do you think it can distract yourself, the players, or anything like that going into the qualifiers?
Not at all. You saw it here, we're with Aviva now, and we saw the tennis balls come on, and that was the start of it. It seems to me if that was the beginning of the movement, it's had an effect already with what's happening within the FAI, but it had no effect on us. Yeah. Not on me, not on the players, not on Conor Hourihane. I think Glenn Whelan's when he slid in after the goal and picked the ball up and threw it at the crowd and went, come on, that shows how much effect it had.
And just regarding the finances, like have you got assurances that salaries for you, your staff and all that kind of thing are going to be okay?
I've not asked for them. I'm doing my job. I was in, spoke to Donald, the president, and we're carrying on exactly the same. I am looking to keep improving and get better results and try and qualify for 2020. That's all I can do.
And the arrangement with you moving on, is that going to be the same? Is there any chance if you do well you could stay on if there's a change of regime at the top?
Well, you just heard my answer about Vinnie Perth saying I should be picking his players, that he can tell Steve and Kenny what to do in 12 months' time when I'm not here. Hopefully we've qualified, we've played in the Euros 2020, and I'll go and do something else and let Stephen and Vinnie can be his advisor, telling him who he should pick.
It's the kind of first element of testiness we've seen from Mick since his return.
Yeah, like I know he's got I hadn't heard that till now. So like he's got a blunt style, And he might feel a bit hard done by to be questioned in terms of maybe the League of Ireland side of things, because he has actually gone to games and he's been out there and he's called Jack Byrne into the squad last month, and I don't believe that was a tokenistic thing. I think that was he saw him play at a particular time and he was impressed and he brought him in, and I wouldn't be shocked if Jack Byrne ended up around the squad again during his time. So maybe he is a bit sensitive to that point. I mean, the fact that Stephen Kenny's coming in and it's something that Kenny's going to have to deal with in a year's time, because he's probably there's going to be an expectation maybe that he'll call people up.
Suddenly it'll be an all League of Ireland squad.
But of course it won't.
No, of course not.
Will there even be any? Like that is a debate that could be had. But I mean, I suppose the thing about Patrick Hooban is that I think it was more of an issue for Martin O'Neill, because when he was in his amazing form last year, he actually didn't get a call at that stage, whereas I can't speak for Patrick Hooban, but maybe by his own admission, I'm not sure if he'd be looking for a shout. He hasn't necessarily, hit the same heights this year.
Plus, we've got the likes of James Collins banging on the door.
David
McGoldrick's had a great season. Callum Robinson's come back to fitness and scored goals.
Yeah.
So we've got a fairly stacked forwards roster at the moment.
And it's also the fact that McCarthy is going for a 23-man squad as opposed to a 40-man squad or a 35-man squad. So it's probably going to be harder earned to get into the squad. Whereas I think Hooban would have been annoyed before. Now, in fairness, I think Hooban might have been annoyed before as well when we were casting the net wide for anyone who may or may not be interested in playing for Ireland. And I think that did legitimately annoy Patrick Hooban and other players, and I can sort of understand that, but I just think on his form alone this season, I don't think it's a massive talking point, whereas it might have been sort of last October, November. So I don't know, maybe Mick's just a bit agitated that it's been brought up.
Stop asking the bloody question. As you mentioned, a lot of Irish players getting good news today, Will.
Yeah, Darren Randolph's been picked on the Championship Team of the Year. His Middlesbrough side have the joint best defensive record, and in goal he's kept 19 clean sheets in 44 games. James Collins and Aidan McGeady, no surprise they're in the League One Team of the season. Collins had already been selected as the League One Player of the Year. 24 goals this term for Luton so far. McGeady also have been shortlisted for that award. 11 goals, 5 assists, keeping Sunderland in contention for a swift return back to the Championship.
And another addition finally to the Irish Open in the summer.
Yeah, Ian Poulter says he's looking forward to tackling Lahinch at this summer's Dubai duty-free Irish Open. The man who's dubbed the postman due to his record in the Ryder Cup. He's been on 5 of 6 Ryder Cup winning teams with Europe. He's been confirmed for the tournament in July. He joins a field which includes major winners Padraig Harrington, Danny Willett and Graham McDowell, as well as the former world number 1 Lee Westwood and defending champion Russell Knox.
Looking very much forward to it. It's been a while, and it's going to be nice. Obviously, going back to the UK at the end of May, going to spend a nice chunk of time, back over in Europe with the family. So to play, a little run of tournaments leading through the Open Championship is going to be great, and obviously that being the Irish Open, it's going to be really enjoyable. It will be a good test. It's going to be, a great links golf course. I haven't played it. I don't really know an awful lot about it, but Ireland has some of the world's best golf courses. Great fans, always been great fans. They're a true follower of golf. They're respectful. They know good shots in tough conditions, and I expect them to be, as good as they always are.
Ian Poulter there, and you weren't alone in picturing Conor Moore coming out with that statement. Sounds more and more like him every day. Thanks, Will. More from Will throughout the evening, more from Dan as well, and we'll be off shortly to Old Trafford to talk to Miguel Delaney ahead of the Manchester derby. But not forgetting, Off the Ball will be live from the Aviva Stadium on the 2nd of May for a Liverpool special, and we want you to join us, provided you're probably a Liverpool fan. United ones probably need not apply. We'll be previewing the second leg of the Champions League semi-finals in the company of Liverpool legend and a man with a couple of Champions League medals himself, Steve McManaman. We'll also be announcing more special guests over the next few days, and the only way to enjoy it is to be there on the night. So to get your tickets now, head to offtheball.com/events. That's offtheball.com/events. That's our Off the Ball Liverpool special with Steve McManaman on May 2nd, with thanks to Boyle Sports. We're off to Old Trafford next.
Off the Ball on Newstalk.
It creates pressures around body shape. I mean, you see things like the absence now of body hair. That's all driven by porn, is it not?
Some of it is driven by porn, but it's important to remember that a lot of the time this is simply because people aren't able to have porn as anything other than default mode for sex education. That's all that they get, or that's the first place that